Hello shooters, I'm Dr. Tactical, and today we're going to talk about concealed carry. Now, the art and science that is concealed carry is wrought with highly personal decisions. In fact, the very decision to conceal carry is a highly personal decision. And it's important that we acknowledge that, because what works for somebody else may not work for us. You know, I have been on this journey since 2015, and I have received some incredible advice, and I have received some horrific advice, and sometimes from the same person. And the horrific advice wasn't necessarily horrific advice, it was just horrific advice for me. It just didn't work into my lifestyle, the way I live. And that's important. You need to know what will work for you and what doesn't, or at least try something, and when you're trying it, realize if it doesn't work for you, so you stop doing it and change to something that does. Because at the end of the day, if you try to do this, you try to be a concealed carry carrier, and you're miserable, you're going to quit, and that's a shame. Because it's better to adapt it and do an abridged version that works for you than to give up on it, because there's a ton of advantages, and we need more people out there who are legally and properly concealed carrying. So I hate to see people quit because they get frustrated, because there's a lot of ways around some of these problems that we run into. And I'm going to share with you my philosophy today. And by the way, we're only scratching the surface of concealed carrying on today's video. And I think there's something here for people who are just starting to conceal carry, as well as those that are really experienced concealed carriers. There's just some philosophies and thoughts that I want to share. But by all means, please use the comment section. If you agree with what I'm saying in this video, let me know. That makes me feel good. If you disagree with me, that makes me feel bad. But on the other hand, actually, sometimes that's really helpful, because I learn a lot in the comments section. And I want people who are watching this video to learn as well. If you think what I'm saying is outright dangerous, point that out. And also, clearly, as I said, we're just scratching the surface. There's so many topics, and really, I enjoy this topic. This is something I've really studied, which is, concealed carry. So if there's a topic in concealed carry, whether it's holsters or the gun itself, or just so many different aspects, put it in the comment section, and I'll see about putting a video out on that topic, because I really would like to run sort of a series on concealed carry. So let's get into it. I'm Dr. Tactical, and the doctor will see you now. Welcome back to the channel. I have heard you guys. I've heard you, okay? I saw the comments in the comment section. I've run into a lot of you socially, and I hear you loud and clear. You guys have said, get to the point. You spend too much time dancing around the topic. Get to the topic. Don't waste our time with all the, hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell thing. We already know that. We already know that by hitting the like button, it tremendously helps your channel. Really, really helpful, and it's super appreciated. And we know that by hitting the subscribe button, not only do we help the Dr. Tactical channel, but we're helping all the gun channels, because YouTube is a very hostile environment for gun channels in general. In fact, they're probably trying to phase them out. And the more people they see who subscribe to gun channels, the more it sends a message to them that gun channels are relevant, and more importantly, potential people to advertise to. So for that reason, hitting the subscribe button is just super helpful and really important. And you guys know that, so I'm not going to waste your time with it. And of course, you're going to hit the notification bell, because that's how you know when more, highly educational and entertaining content like this is being released. So those of you who, most of you probably already hit the subscribe button, and those of you who hadn't, I'm sure you're in the process of hitting it right now. And thank you for that, by the way. And of course, you're hitting the notification bell. Why wouldn't you? It's all free, right? And it's super helpful to everybody. So I am not going to waste your time with that. I'm going to get right to the point as promised. I've got the iPad here. It's all set up with notes just to keep me on point, so I don't just deviate off. So you're welcome. So let's get to it. First and foremost, let me share with you the Dr. Tactical concealed carry equation. Yes, the Dr. Tactical concealed carry equation goes like this. Comfort plus confidence and concealability equals the degree to which you will carry. So in other words, the more physically comfortable you are with the gun you're carrying, as well as the more mentally comfortable you are knowing that that gun is not visible to others, it's not printing, it's discreetly tucked away, the more likely you are to carry the gun. So should either of those other two not be met fully, the chances of you carrying the gun decrease tremendously. So I hear some of you right now saying, wait a second, Dr. Tactical, what about shooting? That's important, right? Well, yeah, but it's not, shooting's assumed, okay? In other words, I look at the shooting of a concealed carry gun like I look at the brakes on a car. So you're going to buy a car. You don't buy the car to stop. You're buying the car to go. Now, you're assuming it's going to stop when you step on the brakes or slow down at least. And when you test drive it, without even thinking about it, you're using the brakes and making sure you're parking and you're doing things safely, and you just feel it, but you're not even thinking about it. Your focus is on, look how nice these leather seats are. Look how plush this is. Look how comfortable it is, how pretty it is. But the brakes are just sort of an afterthought. Now, if there was something wrong with the brakes, you would know about it, and that would become a really big deal. But if, it's kind of like, as a dentist, if we do everything right, everything looks natural and nobody notices. If we do something wrong and something looks off, everybody notices. Very depressing. That's how brakes are also. The brakes are, they're an afterthought, but they're important. Very, very important. So I'm not saying shooting is not important. I'm not saying you shouldn't practice the shooting. I'm just saying the most important thing to a concealed carry gun is that you have it on you, and that and that it's comfortable and can be tucked away discreetly. Those things are more important, because any quality gun will shoot. Okay, let's move forward. One gun. Will one gun suffice? Would you be okay if you just had one gun as your carry gun? Let's say I said, okay, for now on, this Kimber K6S is going to be my concealed carry gun. All the other guns are, range toys or what have you. But that's the gun I'm going to carry. Is that a good idea? Because as Paul Harrell used to say, there are some so-called experts who will tell you that's what you should do. You should have one gun. That's your concealed carry gun. You should practice with it, know the battery arms inside and out. So should there be an incident, your movements are fluid and your muscle memory is there and everything just goes and you don't have to think. That makes a lot of sense. But it makes sense. I'm not arguing that point. I think it makes more sense for, say, a police officer. Somebody who's carrying the gun in a holster in a specific location, wearing a uniform where everything's the same every day. But I think as a civilian, we make compromises. So, for example, there may be a day where we're wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And on that day, you may choose like a little, do I have one here? A little LCP. Or another day you may be wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. And that day you may want to carry an HKP30SK. So, you guns that you get more out of, that you have the opportunity to wear when you're wearing other clothes. Which brings us to another question, which is, should you dress for your gun? You hear people say, buy your pants 2 sizes bigger, wear things differently. I would argue no. I would argue you live your life. The gun is a tool that you have with you. It's like your keys. It's like anything else, something you want to have access to. But I wouldn't change every other aspect of my life to revolve around, around that. So I would recommend that you find the gun that fits to your clothing, to your style, to your comfort level, rather than change your wardrobe around that. Because it's funny, I'll see people who start to get into concealed carry. Next thing I know, they're wearing Hawaiian shirts with prints untucked, and it's so obvious. Obviously it's obvious to me, but it's such a radical change to, these people used to wear khakis and golf shirts that were tucked in, and eventually they want to go back to that anyway. They don't want to stay at that other look. And there's other people who've always been perfectly comfortable, wearing Hawaiian print shirts and baggy pants and stuff, and it works for them. And that's great. It's what works for you. But I would say I wouldn't recommend changing my entire outfit. And by the way, the person who's talking to you right now, went through quite a sport coat phase just so he could wear shoulder holsters for a while. So I've done all this stuff. I'm not just sitting here judging people. I've changed my wardrobe. I have a bunch of pants that are 2 sizes too big, not just because of Ozempic, but some of it just, they were intentionally bought too big so that I could, carry larger guns and hopefully be, more under the radar. Now, there are some states that actually limit the number of guns that you can conceal carry. You have to, I think Washington, D.C., not technically a state, I know, but they have their own rules. California, I think that you can get like up to 3 guns that they'll allow you, but each one has to be tethered to your permit. So you can't just have a whole selection, a whole slew of guns and just pick what you need for that day. So the variables you need to consider with a gun, let's talk about that. Size. So the larger the gun, the easier it is to shoot. The smaller the gun, the easier it is to conceal. Well, you know my feelings on this. The shooting's not as important as the concealing. Now, am I telling you to go grab yourself a little 2-shot Derringer? No. I'm saying whatever's practical for you. The biggest gun that you can very comfortably conceal is what you go for. But just know the trade-off is the smaller the gun is, the easier it is to conceal. And the larger it is, the easier it is to shoot. Makes sense. The grips. The grips are really, people don't realize how important the grips are. That's the part that prints the most. So a couple things on that. Revolvers are very organic and nice in the way that the curvature is. And remember, the grips, or stocks as they call them, are different than a handgun because they don't have magazines in them. So they can make them whatever size they want. They're not bound by the ammunition going into them. And also they're not as angular. So they just flow better. So that's one thing to keep in mind, but also the actual texture. So let's look at this CZ Shadow 2 carry. No, compact. Sorry, I'm not telling you what video is coming up soon, but this is the CZ Shadow 2 compact. And it has this aluminum grip that's very textured, very grippy. Really a great gun for shooting. I really love this gun. However, this grip has torn holes in my pants because I wear this occasionally in a, what's it called? A smart carry type of a holster. And just the moving around and the rubbing has worn holes in pants. And when you wear it in the waistband holster against your side, if you wear it at 3 o'clock or so, this can wear a nice little abrasion on the side of your skin too. So that's a trade-off. This is not a comfortable gun to conceal, but it's a great gun to shoot. Now, another thing would be, let's see, a rubberized grip. So rubberized grips are really nice. They feel great. They really absorb some of the impact when you're shooting. They're very, very nice. However, when you're concealing them, they have a tackiness to them. Now this has it's a pebbled surface, which just gives you more grip, but that would not put a hole in my pants or bother my skin for that matter. But what it does do, the tackiness on this will catch my shirt and print through the shirt, because when I move in certain directions, the shirt gets unnaturally hung up on the rubberized texture. That's a problem. Now, here I have on the, that was a Colt King Cobra. Now here on this Lipsy's Smith & Wesson 432 UC for ultimate carry TI titanium cylinder, 13 ounces. This gun's great. This thing's like, I'm like holding it down, wants to float away. This has the hammery forged grip with the hook on it. I've been very impressed with this. So this has a texture to it also, but not only does it have a texture, it's hard and it has a smoothness to it. So my shirt really drapes over it very naturally, and it doesn't print it really at all. So this is a very nice type of grip for concealed carry. So I alluded to this before, but the shape of the gun matters also, makes a big difference. Like when you have a highly angular gun, like the CZ Shadow or like the Staccato CS, as opposed to something like a revolver that's very organic, very rounded, or even like this HKP30SK has a very rounded shape to it and flows very nicely. It actually, even though it's a fairly fat grip, it does a nice job of blending in. So the shape of the gun matters, and that includes the sights on it. If you have tall sights, that can be something that snags. Also, let's talk about hammers. External hammers. There are a lot of things that have internal hammers. So an external hammer, let's look at the Staccato CS here. So I'm a fan of having a hammer on a concealed carry gun. I like that. I like it especially on this HKP30SK, the LEM. If you notice, this is a exposed hammer, but it's been bobbed, so it tucks out of the way. But the benefit of having this hammer is when I am holstering it. And by the way, all guns, in case I forgot to mention it, which I probably did, have been safety checked and cleared, so they're all good. When I reholster this, if I put my thumb over the hammer, I feel a comfort level knowing that should something get a hold of the trigger, like a shirt tail or something get into there, I'm going to know before anything really bad happens. Now, the reason I pulled this out and didn't keep going with the Staccato CS is while this does have a hammer, this is a single action only gun. So this is theoretically being put back cocked and locked most likely. So that's not really going to be as helpful. I guess you could put your thumb in front of the hammer, so if it does disengage it, you're blocking it. But this is a double action, and that would work, by the way, on the CZ Shadow 2 compact, because this is a double action first shot. So I could still put my thumb over it and seat it. Now, let's talk about beaver tails. One more thing. Just when we're talking about hammers, obviously it's not an issue on striker fire guns or guns that have internal hammers. Okay. So beaver tails. Beaver tails suck. I hate beaver tails. The negatives so outweigh the positives on a beaver tail, in my opinion. I'll throw that out there because I know it's going to piss people off. But the truth is, for a concealed carry gun, I do not mind them at all. In fact, I like them on a competition gun. I think they're great. Or a holstered gun, an outside the waistband holstered gun, no problem at all. But inside the waistband, and they're spears. There's little sharp things, even on the CZ Shadow 2, where they went out of their way to really round it to make it less sharp. That thing still hurts. If you bend, it's going to hurt. And I'll tell you, I've talked to skinny people, I've talked to fat people. It's a freaking spear on the back of the gun. That's what it is. I get the benefit. It lets you grab the gun and hold up high quickly. It keeps you from getting slide bite. I think that's all it does. And quite frankly, that's not a problem that I've had with other guns. The HKP30SK, which is a hammer gun, does not have it. It goes back a little bit. It's got like a swale, but I wouldn't call it, that's not a beaver tail, not like a spike sticking out of it. It's just sort of the frame. That's very natural and rounded. And, of course, the striker fires, they have beaver tails you can put on for people who are, I guess, carrying it outside the waistband or something. I'm sure people are going to give me a lecture on use. And if there's a reason for a beaver tail other than to keep you from getting slide bite or to make you quickly get a grip on it and hold it up high, if there's some other reason that I'm missing, I actually would like to know. So please put that in the comments section, because as far as I can tell, those are the only two benefits, and the negative of this thing stabbing you way outweighs it. So not a fan of the beaver tail, in case I wasn't clear on that. So a lot of carry guns now have rounded edges or smooth profiles. We talked about that a little bit with the shape, but you really, some of these guns, like the K6S, which I keep going back to because the more I handle this gun, the more I love it. It's very smooth. Everything's been rounded nicely. It's got nice sights, but yet the sights really sort of tuck away. They don't catch on things. It's just very well thought out and very well finished. But same thing, HKP30SK, very rounded, very fluid. It has plenty of levers on them, but they're all tucked in nicely. They're accessible, but they're not going to snag when I'm trying to draw. So I'm a fan of that. Ruger LCP, same thing, very fluid. Trigger weight doesn't matter as much on a concealed carry gun. It's really not that big a deal. I would, that's within reason. Obviously, I would not want a 3-pound trigger on for a first shot on a concealed carry gun. I prefer something 5 pounds or heavier. But otherwise, I'm not as picky. Look, I carry a revolver, some that have 10 to 12 pound triggers on the first pull for double action. That's, I don't think that's unreasonable. So the trigger is not as big a deal to me. So let me rephrase that. Trigger weight isn't as big a deal as the actual gun weight. So the gun weight is a whole different story because that will wear on you. Because remember, you're carrying more than you're shooting. And a heavy gun can really take a toll, and it can affect your hips, your back. It really can become an issue. And you're talking ounces, but they matter. Now, that said, there are some really nice holster systems that help to negate that. And if you guys are interested, let me know. I will do a video on some of them. There's also some really gimmicky, crappy ones out there too. And I'll let you know who those are as well. I'm not going into holsters very much on this particular video. It's just, that's a whole nother topic, and I do intend to do something. But if you guys are interested in the systems, let me know. Capacity. Okay. A lot of you know that I am going through a revolver phase right now. So obviously capacity means, it matters to me, but it's not critical. I'm not running around carrying a 2-shot Derringer, but I am comfortable carrying a 6-shot revolver. But if I were in a gunfight, I probably would prefer to have a 15-round magazine, if I could put one in my revolver. It's been argued, and they're not wrong, when people say nobody's ever, come out of a gunfight and said, God, I wish I had less ammo. I just had too much ammo. Yeah, those words have never been uttered. But that said, really, in all the shooting situations that I'm aware of, 6 rounds would pretty much take care of it. And when I say shooting situation, I'm talking about civilians. Except for the Eli Dickens situation. That was a unique situation. And, I'm glad that he had the gun that he had with him. How would that have gone down had he had a revolver, I wonder? I mean, the good news is he probably would have had a higher, a more serious round. If he had a gun that's basically the same size but was a revolver, he'd probably, assuming it was like 357 or 38 plus P, although I'm thinking probably 357. 30 plus P, I think, still in the same realm as a 9mm. So I don't know. I'm curious how that would have played out if he would have taken less shots because he had a higher caliber. Don't know. So speaking of calibers, what should your caliber selection be? Well, the smaller the caliber, the smaller the gun you can do. Now, that's not mandatory. I have a 22 Magnum, the Walther WMP I bought my wife. That gun is larger than my 9mm PDP full size. So the WMP is a big gun. So that said, ideally for concealed carry, you have the ability to make that gun significantly smaller. So the smaller the caliber, the smaller the gun. Also, for people who have difficulty actuating a slide, the smaller the caliber, usually the lighter the springs are, and the easier it is to actuate the slide. So that's a big plus. But then again, the larger the caliber, the better the stopping power. So that, but also the more kick the gun has, the more actually, that's not really true. The kick, I'm not as concerned, because if you go smaller gun with a smaller caliber, that's going to balance out and still kick as much as a bigger gun with a bigger caliber. I think they sort of equal each other from that respect. So as far as recoil, I'm not going to give it to the smaller caliber. I'll give the size to the smaller caliber. Or the recoil, one or the other. You don't get both. So my recommendations: don't limit yourself to just one gun. Have a selection. And things to consider when you go to your selection and you're picking the gun of the day. What's the weather outside? Is it hot? Is it cold? Are you wearing layers? Are you wearing, a t-shirt? Are you tucking your clothes in? Are your clothes fitted? Are they baggy? These are all things you think about to help you decide what gun you're going to wear today. And actually, while you're making that decision, the next question that you really have to ask yourself is your threat level. What is your threat level? In other words, what is the likelihood that you're going to need to shoot someone today? Well, that's going to affect the gun that you choose, most likely. And then after that, once you answer that question, say, well, what is the chance you need to shoot more than one person today? And if there's an answer to that that's any higher than 1%, or 1% or higher, I should say, then the next question should be, should you be going out? So as a rule, first rule as a concealed carry person is stay away from trouble. Don't go into areas where you wouldn't normally go without a gun, just because you have a gun. And the fact that you have a gun gives you a higher responsibility of having to de-escalate a situation and get out of there. So do not become more adventurous because you're carrying a gun. You should be less adventurous. You should be wimpier. You should be less likely to get involved in a confrontation, because things will not go well for you if, God forbid, you need to use that gun. And that's why it's only there as a last-ditch effort. So that all said, I'm just going to end where I started on this. Comfort plus confidence and concealability equals the degree to which you will carry. So keep that in mind. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I'm Dr. Tactical. Dr. Tactical out.